Kindness from those with the least can expose the truth in everyone else. This is the story of Caleb, a homeless single dad who found a lost saddlebag and returned it. What followed began with Mockery, until 81 bikers wearing AFFA patches rolled in and turned humiliation into honor. Before we start into today's story, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if our stories touch your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us reach our first 1,000 subscribers and bring you more inspiring stories every week. Caleb Archer woke on a church step in Summit Junction, breath clouding the pale morning. His 9-year-old son, Owen, slept curled under a thrifted blanket, clutching a Lego man like a talisman. Caleb stretched, wincing, then noticed it near the curb. A heavy leather saddlebag, road-dusted, studded like a constellation. He could have walked away. He could have checked for cash. Instead, he lifted it carefully. It smelled of rain and gasoline and miles. A tag on the buckle said M. Vega with a number. Caleb tucked the bag under his arm, nudged Owen awake, and said, "We're returning this." They crossed to the Bluebird grill, a truck stop diner buzzing with caffeine. The plan was simple. Hand it in, ask Patty at the counter to call the number, maybe warm up for a minute. Caleb's stomach ached with hunger, but he kept his eyes level. Inside, a few locals clocked the torn backpack, the worn boots, the boy's blanket. The judgment was quick, practiced. Caleb set the saddlebag on the counter like an offering. "Found this by the church," he said, voice steady. "Owner's tag says Vega. Can you call?" That was the moment the whispering began. The grill hissed. Coffee steamed. Somewhere a fork clinked a chipped plate. Patty glanced from Caleb to the bag with a wary kindness. "I'll call the number," she said. "You two sit a minute." Caleb shook his head. "We'll stand." He hated asking for anything. Owen pressed into his side, blinking at the neon pie sign. At a corner booth, 3 men in work jackets snickered. "Look at that," one said, a toothpick bobbing on his lip. "Homeless guy finds a saddlebag. Bet he found the cash first." Another chimed in louder. "Right, turning it in now that it's light. Real hero." Caleb kept his focus on Patty's hands dialing the number, but the words dug in. Owen tugged his sleeve. "Dad?" he whispered. Caleb bent and smiled. "We're okay. We're doing right." The men continued. "Probably stole it to begin with. Hope the owner checks what's missing." The phone rang, unanswered. Patty tried again. Across the room, a lone long-distance rider with wind-burned cheeks looked up from his eggs, eyes narrowing at the saddlebag. He straightened, as if he recognized the studs. He set down his fork, listening. The air thickened the way it does before a storm. Patty left a message. "Bluebird Grill, we have your saddlebag." She hung up, relieved and worried. "We'll keep it safe," she told Caleb. Caleb nodded. "No, ma'am. I'd like to hand it to the owner." He didn't say why, how being a ghost to most people had made his promises fierce. Owen leaned into him, small and warm. The corner booth got louder. One of the men, stocky with a sunburnt neck, sauntered up. He tapped the bag. "Funny thing to find," he said, smile sharp. "How much do you skim, friend?" Caleb lifted his chin. "None." His voice stayed measured. "It isn't mine. That's the point." He slid the bag closer to Patty. The man crowded the counter. "Come on. We all know how this works." He glanced at Owen. "Teach the kid to hustle early, huh?" Owen flinched, hugging his Lego man. Caleb's jaw flexed, but he didn't move. "We return what's lost," he said. "That's what I teach him." From the back booth, the lone rider rose quietly, tossed a bill for his meal, and stepped outside into the sun with his phone in hand. Inside, the room leaned toward the moment. Mockery gathering like dry grass near a match. The diner door swung open. A gust of road air followed the lone rider back in. He walked straight to the counter, eyes on the leather. "That's mine," he said. "Miles Vega." He showed his key fob, the studs matching his other saddlebag like twins. Patty exhaled. "Left you a voicemail." Caleb stepped back, palms open. "Found it by St. Alden's steps. Didn't want to leave it to chance." He nudged Owen forward. "Say hello." Owen croaked, "Hi." Miles's gaze softened at the boy, then sharpened at the men hovering near. He checked a hidden pocket, then another. His face went still. "Everything's here," he said, surprised enough to let it show. He looked Caleb in the eye. "Thank you." The corner men scoffed. "Sure, now it's full." The stocky one smirked. "Maybe he put the cash back." Miles tilted his head. "You calling him a thief?" "I'm calling him what he looks like," the man said, too loud. "A panhandler with good timing." The sentence hung there, cruel and easy. Miles didn't raise his voice. He set the saddlebag down gently. "I'll handle this," he told Patty. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a text to a thread that needed only one word. Bluebird. 15 minutes can feel like an hour when Mockery keeps its rhythm. The men at the corner traded jokes with themselves while Patty's knuckles went white on the coffee pot. Owen edged behind Caleb's coat, cheeks pink with confusion and shame he didn't deserve. Miles stood close to Caleb, a quiet wall, eyes on the door. "They won't push it," he murmured. "They don't need to," Caleb said softly. "Words can bruise." The snickering rose. "Look at the knight in leather. Must be nice, friends with money. Maybe the homeless guy's his cousin." Then it came, the low, rolling thunder that changes a room before the door even swings. Engines layered upon engines. The light outside flickered with chrome and red and white patches. The Bluebird's windows vibrated. Patty glanced up, stunned. "Oh my!" The three at the corner tried to laugh, but it stuck. They craned their necks to see the gravel lot filling, lines of Harleys, a living heartbeat. At the front, a tall rider with steel-gray beard and calm eyes removed his helmet, AFFA crest bright as a banner. When the door opened, the chatter didn't just drop. It vanished. The angels had arrived. 81 bikes idled outside, a low tectonic tremor you felt in your ribs. Inside, 10 riders stepped through the door with the ease of men who had stood in many rooms like this and learned to measure them in a breath. The leader, a broad man called Gage Whitlock, scanned the diner. He clocked the saddlebag, Miles, Patty's trembling hands, the boy hiding behind his father's coat, and the 3 men at the corner with laughter still fading on their lips. The gaze was not hostile. It was detailed, like a craftsman eyeing a job. Miles lifted a hand. "Gage," he said, "thanks for rolling." Gage nodded once, then addressed the room without raising his voice. "Morning." No answer, just forks quietly set down. Gage turned to Caleb and Owen. "You the two who returned a bag that wasn't yours?" His tone made it polite, not interrogating. Caleb straightened. "Yes, sir." Gage inclined his head to Owen, a brief, genuine acknowledgement. Then his eyes slid to the corner trio. He didn't touch their table. He only stood where his shadow reached it. "You been talking," he said mildly. "Now listen." The calm in his voice made the moment more dangerous than any shout. Gage rested his hands on the counter, open-palmed, patient. "This man returns what wasn't his. You call him a thief in front of his boy." He let that sit. "I've buried brothers for less than some of the lies thrown easy in rooms like this." The stocky man tried for a grin. "It's a free country." Gage nodded. "So's respect. We all get to decide how much we can afford." He looked to Miles. "Everything in the bag?" Miles tapped the hidden pocket. "Untouched." He faced Caleb. "Could have sold the tools. Could have hawked the rain gear. Could have taken the cash roll. He didn't." A murmur slipped through the diner, surprise, recalculating. Patty found courage. "I watched him put it on the counter. Said he wanted to hand it to the owner himself." Gage lowered his voice further. letting silence do the heavy lifting. Then I figure one man's dignity got tested this morning. Not his, yours. The smallest of the trio flushed red. The stocky one looked at his hands. The third swallowed sorry and didn't let it out. Gage angled his head toward the door. Step outside. We'll talk where the air's bigger. They hesitated, then scraped their chairs back, small and noisy. Outside, the gravel crunched under boots. Sun caught metal and stitched diamonds across windshields. The angels lined themselves in a half-circle, not boxing anyone in, just shaping space. The trio stood opposite, bravado shrinking under noon light. Gage didn't crowd them. He kept his hands at his sides. A lot of people pick on men who are tired, he said. Looks like strength when nobody pushes back. But it's not. Miles folded his arms. Caleb did the right thing when nobody was watching. Gage nodded at Owen, who clung to Caleb's sleeve but watched everything. He's learning what truth looks like. What are you teaching him right now? The stocky man tried to shift blame. We were joking. Gage's mouth lifted, humorless. Joking is when both people laugh. The smallest man attempted defiance. You gone swing. No, Gage said. We don't swing where words will do. He looked dead center. You owe that man a public apology. Same room you tried to break him in. They stared at him. Something in his certainty made refusal feel smaller than the yes. When they nodded, it wasn't to Gage. It was to the math of consequence and a better way out. Back inside, the diner held its breath. Patty froze behind the counter. Miles stood guard by the saddlebag, and Owen pressed into Caleb's side, heart hammering. The trio approached with eyes lowered. Gage stayed by the door, not looming, simply present. One by one, the men faced Caleb. The stocky one went first. I was out of line, he said, voice rough. You did right. I did wrong. He looked at Owen. Didn't mean to scare your kid. I'm sorry. The second managed. I judged what I don't know. The third cleared his throat. Was easier to laugh than to help. That's on me. Caleb held their gazes. His voice was quiet, but it reached the back wall. I accept your apologies. Be better with the next man. It wasn't a victory lap. It was a release valve. Owen tugged Caleb's sleeve. We can sit now? Patty wiped her eyes. You can sit wherever you like. She slid a steaming plate to Owen. Pancakes, blueberry. On the house. When Owen smiled, the room softened. Gage tipped his chin at Patty. Add 4 coffees, he said. And bring a pitcher. Will be a minute. Respect had changed the air. You could breathe again. Miles lifted the saddlebag onto the counter. He unbuckled the main flap and pulled out a thick wad of cash. Trip stash, emergency money. Still banded. He set it in front of Caleb without theatrics. You could have changed your week with this. Maybe your month. You changed your life instead. Caleb shook his head, alarmed. I can't. You can't take this, Miles agreed gently, pushing the roll back into the bag. But you can take what we put in next. He turned to the door. All right, brothers. Bikers filed in from the lot, not all 81, just enough to make the Bluebird feel like a chapel. One by one, they approached the open saddlebag. Some placed 20s, some hundreds, some folded notes with names of garages, leads, a number to call in Spokane, a contact in Boise, a motel owner who owed a favor. No speeches, just hands, paper, and gravity. Owen watched, eyes huge. Dad? They're filling it. Caleb's throat closed. He had thought kindness was a quiet thing you had to hide to keep from being laughed at. Here it made a sound, of money whispering against leather, of men clearing their throats to keep from showing everything at once. Gage rested a hand on the bag. This is how we return what's lost. Patty brought a coffee pitcher and stepped back as Miles closed the saddlebag and lifted it, feeling the new weight. He set it down again. For the record, he said, half smiling at Gage, let's count in the open. On the counter, Bills stacked into neat 20s, 50s, hundreds. A few coins chimed comic relief. Patty wrote totals on a receipt pad. Hands steady now. 1,000, 2, 3. The din grew soft. Forks paused. Conversations thinned to whispers. The number rose like a tide. 4,849. 5,000 even. Owen breathed it out like a secret spell. 5,000. Caleb stared. Money as heavy as distance as possibility. He thought of nights on church steps. Caleb's eyes stung. June had a spare room and a porch that faced a maple tree, and the thought of Owen sleeping in a bed he didn't have to leave before sunrise was almost too much to hold. Owen tugged his sleeve. "Aunt June has a dog," he whispered, as if speaking of royalty. Patty slid 2 paper sacks across the counter, sandwiches, fruit, cookies snug as miracles. "Road food," she said, "and a thermos. You bring it back when you can." Caleb laughed softly, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in months. "I'll bring it back," he said. "I keep my promises." They stepped into the parking lot where engines gleamed, sunlight catching chrome like sparks flying. The truck Miles had mentioned sat near the pumps. Older, clean, a straight 6 that sounded eager rather than angry. Someone had washed the windshield and tucked a map under the wiper. Gage leaned against his bike. "You drive. We'll ride escort to the county line." Caleb inhaled, the air tasting like dust and beginning. Owen clambered into the passenger seat, hugging his Lego talisman. Caleb slid behind the wheel, fingers memorizing the steering wheel's little imperfections the way you memorize a friend's face. Before he turned the key, he looked out at the assembled riders. "I don't know how to repay." Gage lifted a palm. "Ride well. Raise him kind. That's the deal." Miles stepped closer. "One more thing." He opened the saddlebag, now strapped in the truck bed, and pulled out a thin envelope. "From a few of us. For Willow Bend's first month." Caleb shook his head. "You've done." "Take it," Miles said, firm. "Let a good thing finish." Caleb took it, swallowing the boulder in his throat. "We'll make you proud," he said. "Both of us." Owen saluted, solemn and delighted, and the lot smiled. They rolled out in a V, truck steady at the point, bikes flanking like hawks. Drivers on the highway slowed, heads turning at the shimmer of patches and purpose. Owen pressed his nose to the glass, counting helmets like stars. Caleb watched the road with a new posture. They raised coffee cups in a small, solemn toast. Not to luck, to living on purpose. News travels in small towns like lightning once the air's right. The trio eventually wandered back into the Bluebird. Quieter men, tipping more, talking less. One nodded at Caleb from a distance. Apology settled into posture, not words. That was enough. Owen learned to pour creamer without spilling. He and Patty invented the honor pancake. Free when you returned something lost. People started returning wallets faster, keys more often, tempers sooner. Sometimes a rumble of bikes slipped through town and paused out front. Gage would leave an envelope like weather leaving rain. He never stayed long. He didn't need to. On a bright Saturday, someone laughed too loud. A tired kind, the start of an old shape, and it died quickly, embarrassed by the room it was in. Laughter rebuilt itself into something warmer, aimed at no one, made of nothing but air. Caleb stood a little apart, hand on Owen's shoulder, feeling the tectonic plates inside him finally settle. He thought, not for the first time, of the county line of engines idling like prayer. He paid his tab, left the thermos full for the next man, and walked into a noon that felt like a promise kept. At dusk in Willow Bend, June's porch held the weight of the day the way kind would does. Owen played with the dog under the maple. The saddlebag hung on a hook by the door, patched and polished, no longer a symbol of what could have been stolen, but of what was given freely. Caleb sat with a soft tiredness, the good kind. He watched the street and understood that home wasn't just a roof. It was people who had chosen to stand between him and the worst of the world, and him choosing daily to stand between Owen and anything that would teach him to be small. He lifted his coffee. "To the road that got shorter," he murmured. Owen scrambled up beside him. "To the ride home," he said, proud. Caleb kissed the boy's hair, a gesture as old as safety. Wind moved the chimes, the same note the engines carried, low, steady, full of promise. Humiliation had become dignity. Dignity had become protection. Protection had become an emotional truth you could live inside. When a man with nothing chooses honor, the world can still choose him back. The porch light blinked on. The day kept its word. Kindness from the margins can change the center. Caleb returned what wasn't his, and the road returned him, escorted by 81 riders and a town that learned. If this moved you, subscribe, like, and hit the bell. More stories of ordinary courage and unexpected brotherhood are on the way.